Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's topic is quite different than usual, and the reason I'm making the video is because a lot of my viewers and customers have been asking me about this, and it's about tariffs. How would tariffs affect the small engine industry? So in today's video, I want to talk exactly about that. I'm not going to get into the political aspect of tariffs, but I do want to briefly explain to you how they work and how they can affect you, and especially if you own a small engine repair shop. Now, to start with, tariffs are a tax imposed on the goods from another country. So for example, if I'm selling a bunch of snowblowers to another country, they may charge me a tariff, a tax, or a duty charge just for the privilege of selling it in their country. Now, the purpose of tariffs or a tax like that is to make my product that I've sold to another country more expensive in that country so that I don't have an unfair advantage with the domestic companies in that country. So for example, if I built good snowblowers and I sold them wholesale for $900 and then the retailer in that country sells them for $1,500, and all the other machines being sold in that country are around $2,000, $2,500, then my machine is cheaper to buy. So people will automatically gravitate and buy the cheapest machine because of the price point. So with the tariffs put on the products that I would be selling to this other country, now my product is not such a good deal anymore to buy in that country. And the reason for tariffs, guys, is to encourage people of a country to buy local, to buy within their own country, and also to encourage businesses to start factories to build more stuff in that country. I'm going to give you a hypothetical example here. Let's say Walmart brings in these Troy-built snowblowers here from Cleveland, Ohio. They are built in America right here. Now, let's say that they pay $1,000 each, and they're going to bring them into Canada from the USA, but Canada decides to put a 25% tariff. That means that Walmart now has to pay $1,250 to bring in this machine in Canada. That's an extra $250. Now, who will absorb that cost? Walmart won't. They're just going to pass it on to people like you and me. That's how it works. And also, when we're talking about that Troy-built snowblower, if that company in Cleveland, Ohio imports steel from Canada to build that machine and they are taxed an extra 25% tariff, they will just pass on the cost to their distributor. Their distributor will then pass it on to the seller of the product, and the seller of the product passes on to you and me. So 99% of the time, it's the consumer that ends up paying that tariff. Basically, it's kind of like when you import stuff from another country sometimes and you get a duty charge. It's very, very similar to duties, taxes. Now, a lot of companies do that, or countries, they impose tariffs because it brings money into their treasury that they can then use to support their country, pay down their debt, or use it to lower taxes for their population. So basically, at the end of the day, each country has to look out for themselves, and I don't blame them. So the purpose of tariffs usually is to encourage their population to buy within their country or products that are made in their own country, and that in turn supports their industry, their jobs, etc. And also what that does is it encourages the population in a country to start producing these products. So let's say you're importing from China a bunch of chainsaw chain, and it's like 50% cheaper than your major name brands made in your country. So in that sense, the Chinese parts or chains have an unfair advantage to your own productivity in your country. So it can decimate your businesses in your countries. And that's why some countries will impose a tariff so that the parts that used to be 40, 50% cheaper that were imported from China, let's say, now with the tariffs, there's not that much difference between the chain you buy that is made in Canada or the USA versus the chain that's been imported from China. So again, you can see there why governments will do this. This is to protect their industries, protect the jobs of their citizens, And in reality, that's kind of what a government should do, is protect their citizens that way. So I'm not going to get into the political parts of the tariffs, but I just want to let you guys know, if you're thinking of buying a snowblower and you think we're going to be getting some heavy tariffs here in Canada, it might be the time now to go buy a new snowblower. Because if we get a 25% tariff on all imported goods, basically that snowblower will be 25% more overnight. So if your snowblower costs $2,000 now, it will cost $2,500 if we get 25% tariffs. If you need a pickup truck, guys, and you're worried about the tariffs, I would suggest you go buy a new pickup truck right now. Now, when you look at the small engine industry in Canada, I would say over 90% of the parts that we use in our small engine shops here come from the United States. So what I've been doing recently in the last week or so is I've been stockpiling parts like crazy. I buy them in large volumes, bring them in, store them on the shelf, because I will use them anyway. Even if we don't get the extra tariffs, at least I've got parts in stock. So that's what I've been doing to try to save a bit of money in case the tariffs happen. It may or may not happen, but you might want to be careful that way if you run a business and you stock a lot of parts. Another thing too is people have been asking me who will suffer the most from tariffs. Well, what I can tell you about this is pretty well those who have lower incomes will suffer the biggest brunt, because 25% tariff is a huge, huge expense on anything every day. If you look at inflation in the last 4 or 5 years here in Canada, even though the stated inflation was like, you know, below 10%, I think it was way more than that. So it would be a similar hit as during the pandemic when everything got really expensive. I do feel bad for the lower income people because this will really, really hurt them. Now, one way that countries can avoid tariffs in most cases is if they set up their manufacturing plants in the country that is charging them the tariffs. So for example, let's say I'm manufacturing friction discs here in Canada and I sell them to a company in the United States. I am whacked with a 25% tariff, let's say. So I have to spend an extra 25% to sell it to the company in the United States. That might motivate me to set up shop, set up my factory in the United States to avoid those tariffs. Now you have to remember, most companies don't even run on a 25% profit margin. So for a lot of companies, a 25% tariff, they cannot absorb that. And again, they will pass it on to the consumer. But the problem with that is their product may not be attractive to buy anymore because it will cost an extra 25% to buy. I do understand why there could be tariffs imposed on certain countries. But again, at the end of the day, the consumer, us, we're the ones who will end up paying for it. That's how it works. No company will absorb a 10%, 15%, 20%, 25% tariffs or tax on their products and still be able to make money. Some do make a lot of money, don't get me wrong here, but a lot of these companies do not want to absorb that. So in conclusion here, guys, now that I've explained how tariffs work, do you think they would produce more good or bad for economies? Let me know in the comments. And again, guys, if you're afraid of tariffs, go buy a lot of parts right now. Have a great day.